assists faculty and graduate students with Japanese archival research in North America and Japan, preparing them for research trips to Japan. So program, as you can tell from the session program, we'll have presentations by a number of collaborators. It was the idea of Kuniko Yamada-McVey of Harvard Eichi Library to include presentations by Victor Shao, a PhD student doing research in Japan, Ms. Terumi Fukushi from National Library, NDL, and Mr. Egami from the International Research Center for Japanese Studies, Nichibuken. Although Mr. Shao and Mr. Egami cannot join us in person today, they have sent excellent materials for us to share with you. Let's begin the session. As in an introduction to this session, I'd like to look into research process in Japanese studies and to consider roles of language used in materials for Japanese studies. This is you might know this article written in Journal of East Asian Libraries, which was published in 2010. I wrote about archives and Japanese studies libraries in North America, so please look if you haven't yet after some when it's available. Okay, research process. Close look at the research process gives an idea as to how primary sources are woven into the process. When exploring a new research topic, the first step a researcher is likely to take is a literature search to look for previous scholarship on the topic. Previous scholarship is most likely in published format. He or she may use library catalogs and other search tools to find these publications. In the next step to do research and add new knowledge to the field, the researcher has to utilize primary sources such as documents, records, data, and other materials. In the social sciences, fieldwork is also used as a means of acquiring data from primary sources. After analyzing these primary sources and data, the researcher formulates new ideas for a new analysis. These results are then published in some format. These publications, in turn, become previous scholarship for future research. Then, language of materials used for Japanese studies. The chart showing the research process can be divided by language used in each step, as language is a distinctive factor in area studies. In the case of Japanese studies in North America, both Japanese and English can be used for the literature search step, as previous scholarship exists in both languages. However, most primary sources concerning Japan are in Japanese. Of course, sources in English and other languages do exist, but here I'm simplifying the situation in order to focus on the characteristics of area studies. Finally, researchers in North America, accustomed to an English analytical framework and belonging to the North American academic community, tend to publish the results of their research in English. Since Japanese language primary sources are necessary to the research process, most Japanese collections in North American research libraries include primary source materials. This is why institutions collect materials such as microfilms of old newspapers or complete set of journals no longer being published. because these materials can be used as primary sources. The blue dot line shows the field covered by an academic library. I remember discussion on collection building yesterday regarding books in Japanese and English. Japanese language materials tend to cover primary sources and previous scholarship, while English language materials cover research results, namely academic books. Primary sources are not always academic books. And recent trends focusing on popular culture, for example, even manga can be used primary sources. So, English language books and Japanese language books in North American Japanese collection represent different stage or aspect of research process. Now we will move to the first presentation, a report by Victor Shaw on his experiences conducting research in Japan. He cannot join us today in person, so Kuniko will read the wonderful report he sent.
Hi. Actually, Victor is a Harvard student I'm a very good friend with, so I'm very happy to read his report. Introduction. My name is Victor Shaw, and I am a graduate student in History and East Asian Languages at Harvard University. I had originally entered graduate school to study modern Chinese history, but as I started learning Japanese as part of my course requirements, I began to take an interest in modern Japanese history as well, and now work in both these fields. My dissertation, titled Coal Capital, Japan's Empire of Energy in Northeast China, 1907 to 1957. This explores emergence of the fossil fuel industry in Manchuria, as centered on the Fushun or Bujun coal mines, Bujun Tanko. Through the story of this site, I hope to speak to the interplay between business, science, and politics, as well as the importance of energy in shaping Chinese and Japanese experiences with the industrial model. I arrived in Japan late last August and will be here until the end of July. Here, I have been based out of Hitotsubashi University and have been doing research in libraries around the Greater Tokyo area. In addition, I was fortunate to be able to spend a fruitful week and a half at the University of Hokkaido's archives and libraries this past January. It is an honor to be invited to share a little more about my experiences in this collection with you. How did you decide which institution to visit? Aside from the usual searching through library online catalogs and online databases such as WebCat, which is conveniences of our technological age, one thing I did was to take note of where scholars in my field, whose work I really enjoy, did their research. This typically meant reading through the acknowledgement sections of their monographs to see where they worked. Scholars of Japanese Empire, for instance, tended to have spent much time at the Waseda University Library. And with this in mind, I made it a point to do likewise. Mining the footnotes of books and articles is another tried and tested method that I found worked for me too. Advice from advisors and colleagues both in the United States and in Japan has been really invaluable as well. To this end, I found sharing with them in some detail the part of the project that I was currently working on helpful, as they were then better able to suggest specific sets of sources to consult and institutions to visit. In the case of the Hokkaido archives, which contained for me a unique set of sources, reports on mines in Japan and its colonies written by Hokudai engineering students who'd each spent a month at one of these sites and then produced a 100-plus page write-up thereafter. I came across the index to this collection online while running some other random Google searches and deciding how rich they can potentially be, and scheduled a trip up to Sapporo. What and how had you prepared for the research trip? For most of the places I visit, I try to run all my searches beforehand, print out the list of sources that I want to consult, and then take that with me when I actually go to the institution. This saves me a fair amount of time copying them out by hand at the place itself, and gives me more time to do the actual research. With the Hokkaido archives, I contacted the archivist by email prior to my visit, inquired into the accessibility of the materials I wanted to see, the logistics of copying or taking photographs, as well as any regulations that they may have had. I found out that Hitotsubashi Library actually does this service where they do all this contacting and asking for permission for Hitotsubashi affiliates. So I may use this service the next time I visit a new collection. Some places also do require a letter of recommendation. So this is something of which to be mindful. For example, I wanted to consult the microfilm set of personal papers belonging to someone who had once headed the Fushun coal mine, Inoue Tadashiro, which were kept at Kokugakuin University, and this needed a letter of recommendation, which Kuniko Yamada-McVey kindly wrote for me. Next. Was your research trip sufficient enough for your objectives? What do you think you wanted more to do prior to your trip? My research here has been quite productive so far. In addition to finding materials through catalogs and databases online, and then going to the relevant institutions to retrieve them, I have found that visiting collections with open stacks, such as Waseda University, can be extremely useful as well. Through browsing these open stacks, I have been able to find many things that I might not have thought of searching for online. That is, I think, at least one argument against digitizing all libraries or putting their collections into complex automated retrieval systems. At this moment, I have been shifting my attention to writing based on the materials I have collected. And I see this as part of the research process, as I believe I am gaining a better sense of what other sources I might want to look for based on the direction my written work is going. The trip to Hokudai was extremely productive, and the archivists there treated me with a great deal of kindness and hospitality, putting out tea and sweets for me twice a day as I worked in the meeting rooms. I was able to take photographs of all the handwritten reports, which turned out to be even richer than I had anticipated, with great level of details into technology and management of those mines, elaborate maps and drawings, postcards and photographs, and even individual reflections by the students on their experiences. What is your advice for researcher visiting Japan in terms of preparation, on-site access, human networks, etc. Other than what I have mentioned above, I guess one more thing on the human network front would be to try to attend various research groups, Kenkyukai meetings, as well as seminars and conferences on primary sources, which I think are more common in Japan than in the United States. I have gone to a few of these, and it has been helpful on the human network front, as they tend to be attended by representatives from various research libraries and institutions, such as the Library of Developing Economies, Asia Keizai Kenkyūjō, as well. Conclusion. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I hope that these anecdotes have been helpful. Please feel free to contact me, seow@fas.harvard.edu if you have any questions, or if you have any reads on materials relating to the Fushun coal mines. I would be most grateful for any help on that front. Thank you once again. That's all.
Xiao's report includes several important points that I'd like to cover from the librarian's viewpoint. First, I would like to look at research conducted before leaving North America. Preparatory research on materials and their access in Japan is crucial. Preparatory research includes two aspects. One, target resources for source materials and repository institutions. And two, gather information on access to resources. Including these two aspects, I'd like to look the process step by step. Steps include step 1, clarify what you're looking for, object-wise and methodology-wise. Step 2, identify resources available remotely. Step 3, identify institutions holding resources relevant to your research. Step 4, check procedures for access and prepare any necessary paperwork. So, step 1. In the formative stage of research, it is important to clarify the time span or era of research topic, places relevant to the research topic, and people involved in the research topic. Time, place, and people are factors which may guide you to relevant resources and may help you decide where or where not to look, as well as the scope of your research. Another factor when approaching source materials is the type of media. I'm referring here to things such as letters, diaries, public records, business records, newspaper articles, magazine articles, books, oral histories, museum objects, and monuments, and so on. Different types of media may require different approaches. In the handouts here, workbook, I included a table of the types of media seen in the Shibusawa Eichi Denki-shiryo, the biographical material of Shibusawa Eichi, which was published in 1955 to 1971 in 68 volumes. This table indicates that in Shibusawa's case, well, I think many of you know who Shibusawa Eichi was. He was born in 1840 and died in 1931. He's described as a founder of Japanese capitalism. Basically, he was a businessman, but he contributed many international exchange and also the social welfare. And in his case, business reports, documents, including business diaries, prominent, the most used. And next come newsletters, monthly reports of organizations. So the type of media will provide important clues in the search for materials. Libraries usually collect publications such as books, newspapers, and magazines, but not often, for example, diaries. Such publications as a newsletter of organizations or company handbooks or company reports may be frequently found in special libraries. Location or repository search. Usually, resource materials are owned by source organizations or individuals. Company records may be held by the company that created them, for example. It is important to remember, however, that resources may move, particularly when they are in private collections. Factors affecting the location of resource may vary from bankruptcy to institutional change. For example, the company archives of the bankrupt Yamaichi Securities were saved by a professor of economics at the University of Tokyo and moved to the Shiryōshitsu, a section separate from the regular Department of Economics library at the University of Tokyo. Public archives may also move due to organizational changes, such as ministerial mergers or the consolidation of local municipalities. Frequent organizational changes also affect archival resources, so an awareness of the fate of organization is important. Resources tend to move in certain common directions. In most cases, they move along with family, local, or human networks. Universities may have the archives of former professors. Resource materials related to great men may be held in the local museum of his birthplace. For example, the archives of the scholar and statesman Morito Tatsuo are housed in Hiroshima University, where Morito was the first president. Identify resources available remotely. Resources may be available in print book form, such as through Shiryōshu reprints. There are two types of reprints, Eiban, which are photographs of text, and Honkokuban, or transliterations. In addition, resources may be in microbook form and available in your library or through interlibrary loan. The online availability of resources in digital format is increasing every day. Some examples are National Archives of Resource Japan, Digital Archive, 国立公文書館 Digital Archive, National Archive of Japan, Japan Center for Asian Historical Records, 国立公文書館アジア歴史資料センター, and also NDL Digital Library from the Meiji era, 国立国会図書館近代デジタルライブラリー, Waseda University Database of Japanese and Chinese Classics, 早稲田大学古典籍総合データベース. Digital resources available online on the web are often referred to as a digital archive. Some examples include Kyushu University Museum, 九州大学総合研究博物館 They say digital archive at the top. 神戸大学附属図書館 Digital Archive, Kobe University Libraries Digital Archive, which include the Great Hanshin Awaji Earthquake Disaster Materials Collection. Other online resources that may be of use include National Institute of Japanese Literature, National Archival Information Database and Network, 資料情報共有化 Database, and the National Institute for Humanities Resource Sharing Project, 人間文化研究機構研究資源共有化データ共有化システム。So step 3, identify institutions holding resources relevant to your research. As we heard Victor Shaw's report, vital information on the location of primary source materials is often found in previous research. Notes, acknowledgements, references, and so on in such works can provide invaluable information. Checking such works, however, can be overlooked by Japanese studies librarian whose expertise is heavily focused on Japanese language materials. In addition, previous research may be published in English and thus not found in East Asian Library. So where are research or documentary materials located? Are they in archives or some other institution holding primary documents? In the handouts, you'll find an example from the National Institute of Japanese Literature's National Archival Information Database and Network, showing the locations of resource materials in Mie Prefecture. There you see Mie Kenritsu Toshokan, which is Toshokan, Shimin Center, or Ken Seikatsu Bunka Shinpo Senshin, Kensan Group, all types of institutions. So the list for Mie covers a variety of institutions, including archives, library, museum, Kyoto Shiryokan, local history museum, local history compilation offices within the Board of Education of local government. So the prefectural Kyoiku Inkai, the education board, you often compile history of local history, and even in civic sector, Shimin Center. So this list focused predominantly on local history, but resources in the social sciences can be found in special libraries and university libraries as well. In the handouts, I listed some tools for finding resource institutions. For example, organizations such as the Japan Society of Archives Institutions can be a valuable source of information about resource institutions, as they often compile member directories. So, names for organizations holding archival collections. It's not always named as archives. The names may vary, like Bunshokan or Monjokan, Shiryokan, Rekishi Hakubutsukan, Senmon Toshokan, and so on. So, and key terms for archives used particularly in libraries is bunko or tokushu bunko and ruien kikan. If in the library's directory, if it is said bunko or tokushu bunko, they are perhaps archive collection. And resource institutions are referred to by libraries as Ruien Kikan. So, for example, Ruien Kikan Meibo, directory of Ruien Kikan, can be a good source of information on resource institutions. Many libraries compile directories of resource collections. Some examples are listed in the handouts. Other types of resource institution directories have been listed in the handouts and can be found in the handouts other workshops, such as the Japan Specialist Workshop held last month at NDL. Some of you have participated in that workshop. I heard that this year's handouts will also be published on the NDL website. Step 4, check required procedures for access and prepare any necessary paperwork. Once you have discovered where research materials are housed, you then have to find out what procedures need to be taken to access them. Individual institutions' web pages. This is a must place to see. It's necessary to check each institution's website for access procedures. There will often be certain documents that will need to be presented, especially for those from outside of the institution. Find out if the required documents need to be prepared before leaving your home institution. Find out if the required documents need to be, in most cases, Shokaijo, letter of introduction, and Shiro Etsuran Negai, or materials request letter, will be required. Some of the institutions provide templates on the web, but it is not an ordinary practice. In addition, an official letter from your professor or a librarian at your university may be required. In such case, new NCC guide to research access in Japanese museums, libraries, and archives is useful. So this has been launched since 2 days? Or
It was published on March 11th.
March 11th. Okay. So, if you look at this General Affiliation Procedure for Japanese Institutions tab, then you can access here bilingual templates for the request for materials and introduction letter. Okay. Now, I think that's for. Then we move on to next speaker. To Kushi. She's going to introduce what NDL has and what should be prepared before coming on and so on. So